when you talked about View Storefront being launched as a separate company, and you're like, so I'm gonna drink a lot tonight. It's like, I started laughing, and then it was like crickets, you know.
The hardest thing for me right now is that when I was a developer, it was pretty easy for me to measure my work, to measure to measure how good I am at work, to measure how productive I am, because this measurement was basically amount of code and maybe an amount of bugs in this code, and basically that's it.
And the number of stars in the GitHub repo.
Yeah. So this is more like a marketing KPI, but of course, like I'm out advocating for that as well. And right now, the measurement of my work is basically what? Number of emails, number of calls. I was never a fan of calls. I really believe that, you know, at least half of them is totally unnecessary and can be handled on Slack. When I was in a very, very big project for a company from Canada, there was more than 25 developers in there. And, you know, it was a big corporation. And basically they had these dailies, and these dailies were taking, I think, something about an hour, because
daily,
all
like
20
daily
people.
Stand-ups. Daily.
Yep. Like everyone are calling this daily in Poland. I'm not sure like how it is in other countries, but basically like it was taking an hour every day, 25 people or something like that, talking about what they did. And you know, the reality is that no one cares. Like you will hear from 2-3 people, and then you will just mute it and start browsing something. So it was
right.
And I think like most of the meetings look like this. So we transitioned from these dailies, daily stand-ups, to Slack stand-ups, where basically someone was creating a thread with a date, and then under the thread, everyone were posting what they did.
Right.
And I think it's like this for 2 years right now, and it works pretty well. And when you think about this, most of the meetings could be handled like this.
Yeah, totally. I'm not a big fan of meetings. I try to avoid phone calls. I've had a couple of customers or potential customers ask about getting on the phone recently, and I'm just like, maybe later. But I like the podcast. I like because it's more of a it's more of a meaningful interaction, you know, than like the thing where it's like a whole bunch of
it's
people
totally
just,
different.
you know.
I also enjoy very much, like, you know, drinking on a camera right now, because, you know, we have all this pandemic. It's hard to travel. People are a little bit scared as well. So what we are doing with our friends is basically we are having a video call once per week, once per 2 weeks. It depends, but we're having this, and we're just, you know, casually drinking beer, discussing, and this is super cool because right now I'm meeting with people I wasn't able to meet for a very long time. That are my friends from like when I was younger, and right now we're meeting each week just because you know, just because of pandemic. This is
really
super
cool.
cool.
Yeah, it's so funny because I watched your Reacticon talk last night, and there was so many parts where I was like literally cracking up, like you were cracking a joke, but there's like no audience. And like one of them was when you said when you talked about View Storefront being launched as a separate company, and you're like, so I'm gonna drink a lot tonight. It's like, I started laughing, and then it was like crickets, you know. But
actually, you know, it was very, very hard to come to this point. I think you could imagine, like, when you're spinning off from a huge company and there are so many parties interested. So we actually started that in March, as far as I remember. And the estimations were that, you know, 2 months and we are a separate company. So right now it's November and we're just becoming a separate company. It's
wow.
I'm really like impressed by what other people are doing, because me as a CTO, I'm not that much involved into all these talks. I'm basically, you know, browsing the email and seeing, okay, so that's another version of agreement number 176. So just have to read this and just comment. And
Right.
there are some people that are negotiating this.
Right. Right.
This is crazy. Like, I'm bureaucracy is something that could easily kill me. Like,
Right.
I'm not very good at handling this.
Right. By the way, you kind of just move to the side a little bit. If you kind of stay in the
Sorry,
middle,
sorry.
it's okay. It's like
Usually when
a
I'm
pet peeve.
sitting, I'm slowly transitioning from
Yeah.
this, like at the beginning of the day, to
Yeah.
something like
Yeah.
this at
Yeah,
the end of the
exactly.
day.
As long as I know where you are, then we can center the video however you're comfortable.
Yeah, and
Um,
sorry, it's just, I do this unconsciously.
no, no, no. It's just it actually everybody does it. Like so I started to notice it more. But yeah, so I was interested in the breaking off View Storefront as a separate company from Devante, and I was curious to know more about what I know you were really excited about that, and I was curious to know more about like why you were excited. I think you had said you had kind of teased that there was a big announcement coming towards the end of the year or something like
Hmm.
that, which I have some suspicions, but I'm not going to try to get you to spill the beans or anything like that. But I was just
Yeah,
curious to
I
know
think
more about
I think you have good suspicions.
that.
I mean, it's pretty obvious, but we are still like waiting until everything is set it up, and we can just announce this, because like our salespeople are saying deal is never done until it's signed.
Till the fat lady sings. Yeah, until it's signed.
Yep.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah, so we are waiting with that, but we are becoming a separate company. I think next week or maybe in 2 weeks from now, like
Or
officially. But we are
maybe
operating.
8 months from now.
No, no, it can't happen that late. We are too tired. But
Yeah.
we are also operating as a separate company, I think, since May. So it's
Okay.
like, we are still missing some things on paper, and they are blockers for some specific activities like partnerships, etc. Because like, one of the biggest issues we had with partnerships is basically, when you're a part of a company and you're building a great product, but you're still part of a company, when everyone else are using this product, they're not that, I mean, some are okay, but not everyone are that much okay with strengthening this product, or maybe paying something for the partnership, or basically doing any activities, because yeah, you're becoming more visible in this product space, but you're also strengthening your competition because the product is owned by your competition.
Right. Right, right, right. Well, it's
Yeah,
interesting
so.
because like I like this structure, and I've talked to Tom before about like the tribe structure at Devante and everything, and it's really fascinating. You guys have incubated some interesting products. Obviously, probably View Storefront is the most successful of them, but it's a really cool structure. But it's like
Mhm.
probably can't last forever, like you're saying, as the product grows and stuff like that.
Yes, I mean, like, Vivanta itself is kind of like a huge incubator for projects like this. Right now, I think they even have kind of like a framework on how to do this.
Right,
We also have something called Innovation Lab in
right,
Vivanta, which is basically a separate tribe that is focused only on creating a POCs of some products. And then
nice,
with this POC, we are trying to actually, sell it to some clients to
nice.
validate that.
Yeah,
And if someone is buying this, then we are finishing the product, and it becomes kind of like in theory it should become a separate entity pretty soon.
right,
Right now we have that with vStorefront and Open Loyalty. So Open Loyalty is actually the first product from Divanta, like the first
right,
successful one. I'm not sure how many of them they made,
right.
because I was even once when I was working in Divante for I think 1.5 year. We were in the SAP office, because we were also doing Spartacus. It was the very early stage of discussions. And then
Spartacus,
Tom was
is that what is Spartacus? Is that the
headless
Salesforce?
headless headless front end for SAP.
Oh, right. Okay. Right.
So that basically SAP came to us because of this storefront, and they asked us if we want to create a storefront for them. And this
Right.
one is based on Angular, and I think there are like 20 or even 30 people involved into this.
Hmm. Nice.
so this is a pretty huge project. And when
Right.
we were presenting this, and when Tom was making a presentation about Devante, I remember that he was showing the products, and it was the first time I saw two of them. So it's even hard to control what's happening in Devante with products. They're
What?
really crazy about
Oh,
this.
it was the first time you've seen two of the products because there's just so many products that are coming out.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, yes.
Yeah,
And even now, it happens even now.
yeah. It's really cool because I mean every agency wants to try to create a product.
Hmm.
Um, but and everybody tries at some point, but it's very difficult for many different reasons. And Devante's done an incredible job of that. It's really impressive, and it's been really cool to see the progression of View Storefront. Like, it's such a cool product, and just I can like feel like your passion for it, the team's passion. You've really built this like vibrant community, and so it's just been cool to see your progress with that.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you very much. I mean, it's super exciting from my side. I never thought I would witness something like this. I think one of the key reasons why we have succeeded in the community space, I think, is the fact that we haven't got any business plan for that for like 2 years.
You
We
haven't
were
gotten
just
any what? Any
make
business what?
business plan.
Oh, uh-huh, uh-huh.
We were just creating this product. It was good for Devante because it was marketing. It was good for Devante because they were creating projects based on this storefront, and that's it. There was no like um, 10 years plan on
Right,
where we want to be in 5 years, in 10 years, nothing like this. We were
right,
just having fun,
right.
living life day by day. But after some time, after we saw how successful it became, we had some internal talks about spinning this off, and this year this happened. And from there, this is a completely different journey, and it's like 3 or 4 months right now while we are operating as a separate company, and while I'm a CTO of this storefront. And it's super crazy. It's super crazy to do this without this parachute, because I always had Piotr, who is CTO of Devante, as my
Gotcha.
mentor.
Uh,
And there was all it, if I was failing with something, there was always Piotr to ask. If I had any problems, there was always Piotr. Right now there's no Piotr. And figuring all that out by yourself, like how to hire proper people, how to delegate them to the right task, how to keep them motivated, how to keep them excited, this is super super interesting. I mean, it's super hard, but it's also one of the best things that could happen to, I think, anyone who
yeah,
wants to build something, when you can actually influence the people's lives with your decisions,
yeah,
and at the same time build something really 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 cool. So this is
yeah.
what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to keep everyone excited. I'm trying to to find tasks for the right people, that are like exciting for them. So for example, even a small UI changes in a complicated products are exciting to junior developers. So I can do this. I can find something more challenging for others. Like, it's kind of like playing The Sims, and I
Mm-hmm.
really like The Sims.
Mm-hmm. Nice. How old are you, by the way?
I'm 25, so not
Wow.
that old.
Yeah, you're a youngster, man. You're kicking butt, dude. That's awesome, man.
Yeah, I
Um,
had a lot of luck. I had very good mentors, so I, I,
how
I
much
consider myself lucky.
how much coding are you doing? Like rough percentage. I know you're doing a lot more management as a CTO and stuff like that. Are you still
Right
doing
now,
50% coding, 25, 0%? Like,
so at the beginning, when I was like transitioning to being a CTO, I immediately stopped coding because there
okay.
were so many things on my head that I just had to organize all of that. I just had to delegate things, because apparently you're waking up in reality where everything depends on you, and
Mhm.
you're the decision maker in every space. So the first thing I had to do was delegating things. And once I did that, I'm still in the process, but right now I have some time. I have some free slots. At least I don't always have calls from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. So right now, when I have like roughly 4 hours during the day without calls or any other meetings, I think I spending maybe 1 hour a day on coding. But I'm not
Mhm.
coding actively. I mean, I'm not taking any issues. What I am doing is I'm just writing a POCs,
More
and based on this.
creative type coding, like high level type stuff.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, exactly. So whenever we need some feature, and I'm not sure how I should even describe that in an issue because I don't have a broad enough view of this particular feature, how it should look like, how it would affect the public APIs, how it would affect the private APIs for integrators, how will it perform better. Maybe, I'm overlooking something. So then I'm prototyping this. Very, very small example. And based on this prototype, I'm just sending it to some of the developers and then writing an issue based on that.
Yeah. I feel
So
like I feel like, when I think about products that have like this trajectory that yours has of this like passionate community and really cool product that's iterating fast. Like I think about maybe like Laravel and Taylor Otwell, or I think about Vue itself with like
yeah.
Evan Yu. I
Hmm.
feel like they have to keep coding. Like I assume Evan Yu codes. I could be totally wrong about that, but I assume he does. I feel like the like the founder led, like I don't know if you consider yourself a founder or not of Vue Storefront, like has to stay in that, like of course you have more management and stuff to deal with, but like you kind of have to stay in the code, or else if you get too far from it, then there's all this bureaucracy and all this stuff, and then it just kind of loses
Hmm.
like its heart a little bit, like Adam Wathan with Tailwind, or just some of these products that are really cool you know
Yeah, yeah, I think you're totally right. And as far as I know, like all the people that you have mentioned, they are coding very extensively. But it's kind of different when you have to organize everything by yourself as well, because then there's no one else to do this. So you don't have so many possibilities on your plate to just jump straight and code.
yeah,
Uh, but I totally agree that you have to stay close to the technology that you're using, because otherwise you're like in my case, like I'm making tons of architectural decisions every day, like how to structure the public API, how to make all these dots connecting. You always have to, like, there's always has to be someone who has this big picture in his head,
yeah,
like, okay, like how the software should look like, what principles we're trying to follow, and maybe how all these future dots will connect to what we have right now. And as long as you're coding actively, even the POCs, and you're training your brain to still think as a programmer, I think you can do this job, and you can do the job the way you should do this job. And if you will stop coding, then you, like, very slowly will start thinking maybe in a different way, because I believe, like, coding is kind of like lifting weights.
yes,
you you can be good at this, and you can, when you stop lifting weights, you still know how to do all these exercises with a perfect technique. You still have all this know-how about nutrition and stuff like this, but you're not trained at all. And if you want to lift heavy weights again, it takes time.
right, right.
And I was at the same point, like, I wasn't coding for maybe 3 months or something like this, and then I came back to coding, and I was like a junior developer again, even though in my mind I knew all this stuff.
Even though
I
you
knew
built the
everything.
damn thing.
Yeah, I knew everything. I was making so many mistakes. I was, thinking so long about every line of code I have to write, and it wasn't like this when I was an active developer. And right now, when I was doing some of this, when I did some of these POCs, when I was coding, like, at least 1 hour a day, or, well, I'm trying to, at least. Uh, right now, I'm much more productive again.
Hmm.
So it's definitely a muscle that you have to train. Also, I'm arguing with my developers a lot every day,
That's important.
because everyone, yeah, yes, it's super important. It's super important because when you're arguing with other people, you're exchanging your views. Then at some point, after arguing for some certain amount of time, everyone are on the same page.
Yeah.
At the beginning is always arguing because everyone has different vision, but if you have a chance to talk enough, then you're more or less sharing the same vision, or at least know what is the vision of the other person, so you
Yeah.
can kind of like apply this to your code as well.
I like
But
that. I like that word arguing because it's like it's not that you're telling them what to do. Obviously, like you don't want to argue in the sense arguing can be seen as being negative, but it's like even though you're the boss, the CTO, you're still like trying like if they have an argument to disagree with you and you're farther away from the code, you still have to try to convince them and persuade them. Kind of like
mhm.
you're on equal ground, you know?
Yes, yes, and this is a super important lesson that I've got from Piotr again. We were arguing a lot during this development. So many times I was pretty damn sure that okay, that was too much. I'm gonna be laid off. Seriously, it happened so many times. But Piotr really like he
Is
also
this
gets
a
the
Polish
importance of
thing?
arguing.
Is this a Polish thing that you go at it?
I don't think so. I know many people doing
Yeah,
this,
it's just a
but like
developer thing.
yeah, it could be. It could be. And we were arguing seriously, like these were very, very serious arguments in many cases,
Ah,
not only about technical stuff, but also, because every time there's some kind of an issue, this issue always has layers. And this layer is usually not only in the code, the issue is usually in the management and communication.
yeah,
So we're arguing also about this, and like this is far beyond my competences and far beyond what I was hired for, in theory,
yeah,
arguing about this stuff. So
yeah,
you could like in many situations you could expect being played off, but because he didn't, and I had this freedom of expressing my ideas, of expressing my fears, and basically being open about everything I thought makes sense. Uh, because of that, we managed to build so good product, and because of that, I managed to think the way I'm thinking right now. So what I'm trying to do right now with my developers is basically the same thing. So I know that when someone new is coming to the project, they don't have this, they don't know much about this, so they are focusing on small things. They don't have this big picture, and because of this, they also don't uh, do things as good as I could, because
yeah,
I'm in this project for like most of my professional career, and I was thinking about all these patterns and things that we are doing for a few years.
yeah.
But it shouldn't be like this. It shouldn't be that I am just telling everyone what they should do and they are doing this, and then I'm seeing, okay, so this is not the best approach to this problem, so then we have to rewrite this. And at some point you could end up telling people, okay, do this, then they are doing this, and then you see, okay, it's not good, okay, so do this, okay, it's not good, so do this. So they're kind of like becoming just machines that are coding.
Hmm.
And
Robots.
yeah, robots that are coding. And what I want them to do is basically to learn on all
Hmm.
of this, to
Hmm.
argue with me if they think that something doesn't make sense, because in many cases it doesn't make sense.
Yeah,
And this is what I always try, to this is what I always try to tell people is that I'm not some kind of of uh I'm missing the word.
like you're not perfect. You don't have all the information. Like you're not
Okay, that
omnipotent
wasn't
or
this word, but yeah, yeah. I'm
yeah.
not perfect. I don't always have the best answer. I just have my ideas, but they also have to be validated, and I'm paying you for validating my ideas.
Hmm.
And once people
Yeah,
get that, then everything is fine, because they
yeah,
know that they could argue, they could express their ideas, and there won't be any bad emotions.
yeah. It sounds like you have a really good culture of being able to figure things out, argue things out, and then some people will argue without really being productive. I've been on teams before where you're talking, and then you never ship. Nothing ever gets shipped. So
Yeah,
you have to have both of those, right?
yeah, yeah. I'm trying to be very. I'm trying to critique myself for all the bad things I'm doing, and I'm constantly thinking about all these bad things I'm doing. I think it's also a good activity to do this, to not only focus, on your ego and on getting things done, but also on your failures
Mhm,
and what you have done wrong, and also to admit that
mhm,
in front of others. It,
mhm,
it helps me a lot, actually, because then if you don't do this, at some point you will fail spectacularly, and
mhm.
you won't be used to this.
Yeah,
At
yeah.
least, this is my feeling. Like when I have some influence and when I can actually, assign tasks. So I'm the person who is assigning tasks. I'm the decision maker. Uh, I kind of like to get people used to the fact that I'm making mistakes,
Mhm.
because it's just better for me as well, not
Right,
only for them.
right. It's a good culture to it's okay to make mistakes. Everybody makes mistakes. The boss makes mistakes. We're gonna keep experimenting. We're gonna keep building stuff and trying things out.
Yep, I think
Yeah.
it's all about being empathetic enough to other people, because like ultimately when I'm hiring people, I believe that I am hiring people that are excited about what they are doing, that they are passionate about what they are doing, that they want to do their job the best as they can.
Mhm.
So my job is to keep them motivated,
Yeah.
and just this,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
it works so far, and I'm really like, this is one of the greatest things ever, that this approach works,
That's
because
cool.
I really wanted to work in a company where there is no a chain of order, there is no there, maybe not that there are no deadlines, but developers are more important than deadlines.
Mhm.
And in Devante, there is kind of like this culture, but of course, there are also clients, so it's not that easy. But when
Right,
you're building a product, I think it's a little bit easier, because
right,
it's just all about planning. So if I plan things right, then I have my own free time, developers have their own free time, and everything is fine. If
right.
I plan things wrong, which happened last week, actually, so we promised. Oh fuck, maybe the clients are listening, so I won't tell about this. But
That's
basically,
okay. You don't have to get into details.
basically we had to do something very quickly, because we said that we have this already, and client asked for a demo. And usually, when we are saying that we have something like this, it means that we have everything figured out and ready. And
Mhm,
at the moment when you will be signing the deal, it's just a week for us to finish this.
mhm, mhm.
And I think everyone are doing this. Some people are more open about this. Some people are less open about this. I'm
Yeah.
pretty open about this, because usually, when we are integrating some third-party service, we're doing some kind of a POC, then seeing
Mhm,
how much of an effort it is,
mhm,
and then waiting with a full integration until we have a client for this. Because
mhm.
otherwise, we would end up creating dozens of integrations that maybe no one will use in a year or two.
Yeah, yeah. I think that, and I think again, you've been super productive with the product and all the integrations that you have. I was looking at some of those. You've got a lot of ecom backend integrations, Shopware, Commerce Tools, Shopify, Magento, and then you've got a lot of CMS integrations. I was curious to
Hmm.
drill into those a little bit. I know you were saying you have a great relationship with Shopware. And
Hmm.
it's funny, like I've been starting to kind of, from being so Magento focused, I've been starting to look at other platforms in the ecosystem, and Shopware feels very much like Magento in the sense that it's open
Yes.
source. You know, it feels like it has a similar vibe to like the early days of
Yes,
Magento.
definitely. I have the same feeling. Like, we are originating from this Magento space. I haven't got the chance to know Magento from the management perspective, I, but from the community perspective, I think it's super similar. They have definitely the same vibe.
Yeah.
Many people say that Shopper is a new Magento. As I think there are some reasons behind this, not only reasons like that are deeply technical, but also the community reasons. I know some people that are maybe not abandoning Magento because it's not like a one solution choice, but I know many people from Magento space that actually right now also a part of shopper community.
Yeah.
And there
yeah,
are super cool people working in there.
yeah.
Seriously, like Dominic Klein, who had his presentation on ReactIcon as well. So
Mhm,
we are in contact with Dominic from the very beginning. Like the whole partnership that we're establishing was done with Dominic. Right now, he is also a technical leader in Shopware PWA.
mhm,
Uh, so we have a very good contact with him, and because of that, we also have a lot of contacts with other Shopware people. And I love this,
yeah,
seriously. Like, I think they're sharing also the same values, so they want to be motivated. They don't like this, corporate style
yeah,
of managing the company. So they're also good at admitting their mistakes. They're also not very judgy about them.
mhm,
So yeah, I really, really, really enjoyed this cooperation, and I'm pretty sure it's gonna be even better in the future. Right now,
yeah,
when we are a separate entity, because we can also invest a little bit more into the Shopper PWA.
right.
We can promote it differently. Yeah, actually, I wouldn't believe something like this would happen one
Yeah,
year ago. But we will
yeah,
become kind of like official front end for Shopware.
right.
So it's super cool.
So the Shopware PWA is basically like an instance of Vue Storefront. Is that the idea?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so like this is a little bit complicated because we were starting like initially it was meant to be just a Vue Storefront Next, which is like this new version of Vue Storefront
Mhm.
for Shopware. The same as any other integration for any other platform, because our strength is in the fact that all these platforms are managed in the same way. They have the same interfaces. Because of that, we can have the same extensions. We can exchange third parties within the same code base very easily because all of them have the same interface, the high level interface.
Dry, basically. Dry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and so we started doing this, and at the same time we started Shopware PWA, and I would say it's impossible to coordinate two projects that have slightly different goals, because our goal, like when we were figuring out the feature, it was much harder to implement that, because we had to think, about, okay, so how would it work, let's say with a CMS. So when we were figuring out the pattern for integrating CMSs and interfaces for that, we had to think about all the CMSs. And
There's
in case of
hundreds of
Shopware, they
them.
had,
There's like hundreds of
yes,
headless CMSs. I had no idea how
yes,
many
and
there were.
most of them does just exactly the same job.
Right.
By the way,
Right. Right.
like seriously, I had numerous calls with CMSs right now, because we're making a lot of integrations, and the great thing is that all of them are very mature right now. I mean, when you were using CMSs, headless CMSs, let's say 2 years ago, you were basically allowed to manage your content. That's it.
Mhm.
And right now, this content evolved. You're basically from almost any CMSs, you have kind of like a visual builder. So the content type is basically mapped to a component in your application. Then you have full pages where you're managing this modules, and this translates directly to your components. So right now with CMS, you're not only managing the content, you're managing the whole structure of a web page.
Mhm. Mhm.
So but also like in that case, you could say that all of them offer the same thing, because this is just how CMSs evolved.
Mhm.
Of course, all of them have a lot of unique features as well, and I think UX of the admin panel is the most unique feature of any platform. So I could
Interesting.
have two platforms that are offering exactly the same things, but with one platform, I'm super productive and I can do a POC if in 2 days, and in another platform, even though from the front end perspective it's exactly the same, it takes me much longer to do this. I'm really, really a fan, for example, of Storyblock. I think they have one of the, or even the best UI in terms of this visual building capabilities.
Mhm. I noticed you use them for your, I was playing around a little bit with the, Vue storefront components, and I think you use Storybook within your own
Storybook,
documentation. Oh, is that a
not
different one?
Storybook.
Oh,
Storybook.
okay.
Yeah, this is a very common misconception. I think they are really regretting picking this name.
Well, there's so many CMSs, they're gonna have collisions in with their namespaces.
Yeah, so Storyblock,
Oh,
and
okay.
they basically, like, their main USP is this visual builder. So
Mhm,
in like all these modern CMSs right now, we have kind of like a dashboard when you have some visual representation of your website, but this is usually a blog with a name. Maybe you can reorder them. Maybe there is some kind of a preview in terms of like maybe you're making screenshots of this component so it's visible in there, but just this. And in Storyblog, you basically have an iframe, and in this iframe you can click on the components on your application and modify their content. It's much more immersive, I would say.
Nice. Nice. That's
And
cool.
from the client perspective, I think it's super cool. And if I were a client, I would definitely pick CMS, mostly based on the UI. Of course, like the first is always pricing,
Yeah.
but then
Yeah.
then they're offering more or less the same things. Of course, like the devil is in the details. When you're a huge corporate, then it's completely different story, because maybe something in the agreement is even a deal breaker.
Right.
But
Right.
for someone who has just a small shop or even medium shop, but it's not a huge corporation, I think this productivity part is super super important.
Hmm. That's interesting. Yeah, I was looking at some of the CMS integrations, and I noticed that like Adobe was one of the partners too. I think Adobe Experience Manager, and it's interesting because I've been trying to like better understand the Adobe ecosystem a little bit too. Obviously, as Magento was acquired, but it's like you can't really see the products. I don't think you can't just see demos of them. So like I don't like I hear about Adobe Experience Manager all the time, but I don't really know how it works or anything like that. How it compares to other CMS options out there. You know.
Yes, exactly. And this is like, you can read all this list of features and you could think, oh, this is super cool. And then you're spending half a day to figure out how to move a banner because the UI is so shitty.
Right. Exactly.
So this is exactly what I'm talking about. It's
Yeah.
also all about productivity, because like the main purpose of this tools is basically to make you more productive.
Yeah.
And it's crazy that people still compare that on paper. Like,
Yeah.
okay, so how this list of features will make you more productive than this list of features? These two lists of features are almost the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
You
Yeah.
have to feel, you have to check this. And like this is a super interesting learning I have after seeing so many CMSs.
Hmm.
And also I see that even though they are very similar, each CMS is focusing on a slightly different thing, which is also very cool, because then when we have clients, it's not like, okay, we're always suggesting this CMS,
Hmm.
because actually, like, depending on a client, depending on the size of a client, depending on their needs, we can suggest something else.
Hmm.
Okay, it wasn't supposed to be a podcast about CMSs. Sorry.
No, no, no. It's okay. I mean, it doesn't have to be about anything specific. I like to just talk about whatever comes up.
I'm
Um,
just doing a lot of this stuff recently, so it's
yeah, no,
occupating.
I always think whatever is top of mind is the most interesting thing to talk about. I remember you saying, I think I remember you tweeting that you were thinking about starting a YouTube channel. Did you end up doing that?
Uh, yeah, so we have a YouTube channel for the Storefront, and we have 1.5K subscribers, which is pretty cool, I think. Like, I think for YouTube of e-commerce platform, that's a huge audience.
Yeah.
And this is where actually I want to post more videos. So I probably won't start anything by myself, but I'm thinking about having some series on our YouTube channel. So the community can get the software a little bit better. Maybe we can talk about some updates in a video format, so it's easier to consume. We're figuring that out. Right now, we also have a very, I would say, proactive technological leaders of different products that we have, because we have still Storefront One, we have this Storefront Next, we have Shopper PWA, we have Storefront UI, and all of them want to create their content. Right now, they are mostly doing blog posts, but we plan to conquer the YouTube as well. It's much
Nice.
harder for me, especially it was super hard, because right now during this pandemic, when I'm doing talks for conferences, I
Hmm.
usually have to record them, because you can't be sure about the network conditions
Hmm.
during the conference.
Hmm.
So we always have to pre-record that, and then you are for the Q&A, because like, okay, if you don't make it into the Q&A, it's okay, it's acceptable. I mean, because of the network connectivity, not that you just decided not to.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah, it's
and it's super
interesting.
hard for me,
Uh,
to just talk to the camera and feel excited about what I'm talking. My talk on VJS Amsterdam, I think I was talking like a robot, like, the same volume, this no emotions, nothing, because I
uh,
was I was focused, on just
yeah,
delivering
yeah,
what I want to deliver.
yeah,
And for my second talk, so for View Toronto, which is happening, I think, on Friday. Right now, I think it's the biggest View conference in the world because they decided to do this for free and online. I think that that's the perfect combo for
yeah,
no money but good marketing.
right.
And and for this conference, it was much easier because I got a little bit used to this. But I was hearing from many of my colleagues who are speakers and very, very seasoned speakers. The people that are not just entering the stage and talking about the technology, but they're making a performance. And they were saying the same things like, okay, so what should I do with this camera?
Yeah,
How to record it, how to feel authentic? And it is super hard.
yeah,
Like, it was much better for Reacticon. I think mostly because it was live first,
mhm,
so it's still better than the recording. But also there was Ise, and he was doing excellent job in warming up.
yeah,
When there is someone who is warming you up, then you kind of like feel like on the live event. I think it should be a mandatory for all the recordings that
right.
when you have to do a recording. Before that, maybe the organizer, maybe someone else is warming you up, asking
Yeah,
questions, talking, etc., and then you're on full going and recording this. I
yeah.
think that's the missing.
Totally, yeah, because it's just a different medium, and when there's no like people there, it's a, what do I do? How do I engage with this medium? And it's a tough. I noticed in one of your Twitter threads that a lot of those people that were speakers were starting YouTube channels, which I think is probably something that's going to continue to happen, as speaking opportunities are, I mean, in-person speaking opportunities are basically becoming YouTube opportunities.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I mean, after I recorded these two videos, I don't have this barrier in my mind. So, before I was recording the VJS Amsterdam talk, it wasn't only clicking the record button. It was a whole fight that happened in my head, actually. Uh, and for the second recording, it was a little bit easier, but still the same. But after these two recordings, right now, when I was supposed to send you this 5 seconds video, I just clicked record and recorded that, sent that, and it all took me 30 seconds, and I was like, fuck, that was
That
quick.
was quick. Yeah,
So, it's all about getting used to this, I think.
yeah, it's a lot of the little things too, like getting your setup right so you're comfortable with it and stuff like that. But it's kind of like you mentioned a couple city specific conferences that are online, and it's kind of
Hmm.
funny to me how there's all these like city specific conferences and everything's remote online, but they're still organized by city. It's like
Yeah,
it's just kind of
yeah,
funny to
yeah,
me.
yeah. I was also thinking about this. I mean, for some events it makes sense, but like usually on meetups, on V meetups, you basically have like 50% of talks of like people that are from there, and 50% are talks from either like remote talk or someone who just was around and then decided to do a talk. And right now, when everything is global, you basically see the same talks and the same faces on most of the meetups
Mm,
because they have this international lineup. But like international lineup, what does it mean? It just means that we're picking from this set of top 10 View conference speakers, and they apparently have a new talk, so then they're doing this new talk on every fucking meetup.
right.
This is why I'm not watching meetup transmissions, because I mostly see the same thing.
Yeah, it's hard because everybody's trying to figure this out with COVID, and we want to kind of copy, in some ways, the local events to remote events, like copy and paste, but it's kind of fundamentally different. But I have to say, your Reacticon talk, I was like cracking. Like I think the first time I've seen you talk, and like you're like pretty serious and technical and stuff like that. But like I was cracking up, and I was just like, oh man, I wish there was an audience here to be laughing at all these jokes. It was good.
Thanks. Really glad to hear this. As I said, I was like, he said it a great job in warming me up. So I
Yeah,
just had a good humor. So and this is also a different type of conference when you have Isa making all the jokes, preparing all these graphics with animals and with funny captions.
yeah.
It's also like depends highly on the atmosphere and basically what type of the conference it is. I'm not sure I would be able to do the same talk on maybe some other conference.
Hmm.
So it's very interesting, actually. Even though you're doing everything remotely from home, you still kind of feel this atmosphere because it's
Yeah,
being built over time,
yeah,
uh, and that also influences how you're doing this talk
yeah.
and maybe the topic and actually the whole everything.
Yeah. Yeah, it comes back to like creating an atmosphere, whether that's the personality, the warm up, the mood, the tone, and then the work that goes into production, post production, graphics, all that stuff makes a difference. And it seems like you did a really good job with that. There was a lot of cool stuff that came out of it. You had some cool announcements. Willem had his Hiva themes and some cool
This
Laravel
is
stuff.
super impressive, by the way.
Yeah,
I mean, I really love the concept because ultimately, like, when the thing that you want, when the problem that you want to solve is performance, just performance, nothing else, I really believe that it should be handled on the server side because the main factor that is actually influencing how long your application is being downloaded and how long it's being executed is basically the JavaScript and the
mhm,
JavaScript execution.
mhm,
On low-end devices, it's even worse. Like on phones, it takes much longer. So it should definitely be handled on the server, so we can be sure that the experience is the same for everyone, no matter what device they have. Like,
mhm,
of course, it will vary to some degree, but maybe we can minimize that.
mhm,
Uh, but then there is also a factor of user experience. So single page applications are just much better for the users to consume.
mhm,
So ideally, we should have something that is 95% rendered on the server, but then on the client side, we still have the smooth transitions. And there are things for this. I mean, there are libraries for this, and you can do this without frameworks. But, you know, it's a little bit more complex when you're creating the software because it's not all about the end goals only, because you also have to somehow fit into the market with the technology. You also have to think about the productivity. Also, you also have to think about, okay, so when it will become popular, would it be hard to hire experts on this particular areas in terms of view storefront?
mhm,
Right now, we are really trying to use technologies that are very widely used
mhm.
and have huge communities just because of these competences. So it's much easier for agencies to actually hire people. We're even thinking, okay, so how expensive developers knowing this technology are?
Mhm.
And I mean, there's a number of factors influencing the technologies that you pick to build a product. And I think, like, from the technological point of view, what Hiva is doing is absolutely amazing. If the only problem that they want to solve is performance,
Mhm.
uh, but also Headless itself is bringing much more into the game than just performance. And I would say that, this Headless PWAs, all of them will probably score much lower than just old-fashioned server-side render PHP application. But at the same time, they are offering much more in terms of the maintainability. They are offering much more in terms of the capabilities, in terms of like how you can scale this. So I think that
Mhm.
the biggest value of Headless is there. Of course, if you do this right, you usually have much better performance. But it is not because this framework driven applications are super fast. This is just because other applications are fucking monoliths and they are so slow. It's that you're just having a better solution, but it's not definitely the best solution
Yeah. What's the deal
for
with
this specific.
What's the deal with Alpine? Because everybody seems to love Alpine. I haven't used it much myself. I kind of understand that it's a little simpler. You can do things like template logic without having to create a component, things like that. But I think to myself, like Vue has this rich ecosystem, for example, like the Vue multi-select widget that I use, and there's 100 examples of that. So I'm thinking about like how will it scale the use of Alpine, or is that just meant to be used for simple stuff, and then for more complex stuff you bring in Vue or React? What's the deal with it?
I think I will disappoint you because I don't have any strong opinion on that. I
Okay.
used Alpine only like on some online IDE, but I can maybe guess. So my guess is that people right now are a little bit exhausted with all this complexity
Mm,
in not only JavaScript ecosystem but basically front-end ecosystem, about things being a knife, a Swiss knife, maybe to do
mm,
everything.
mm,
So right now, what they are doing is, everyone are advocating about lowering your bundle size, using less third parties, etc. And basically, this is a problem that Alpine is kind of like solving. So you are picking only the functionalities that you need, and because of that, you have small bundle. You have much lower entry level, and you can always scale up.
mm. But
So that
when
would be
you
my guess. That would be my guess.
and then when you scale up, you're going to scale up by like adding, for example, React or Vue components. Like there's not going to be this rich ecosystem of like Alpine components for lots of different widgets that you
Mhm.
would need and components and things like that, most likely.
Well, you could do this, and you could also maybe use web components for this. So then you have a nice API that is basically supported by most of the modern browsers, and that
Mm,
doesn't need any third-party code to be downloaded.
mm,
Like when you're using this, when you're using Vue, then you're also like it's not worth using some third-party routing solution. It's not worth using web components, because ultimately now you're a part of Vue.js ecosystem, and everything works best when you're still within this Vue.js ecosystem. So by like decision, when you're deciding that you want to use a framework, you're kind of deciding that you're tied to some specific way of solving problems, and picking tools that are solving only the problem that you want to solve but nothing else gives you freedom to decide on solutions to other problems later, and
yeah,
maybe pick the better tools for that.
yeah.
So like there are many advantages but also a lot of disadvantages, because when you have this Vue.js and you know that you can handle so many things with that uh, ecosystem, with that set of tools that is known to some set of developers, it's much easier to hire talent. It's much easier to exchange knowledge within a company when you have like a bunch of products based on the same framework.
Mm,
And for you as a developer, it's also much easier to increase your worth on like increase your price on the market, because then you're learning a technology that everyone are using. So in theory, you have much more places where you can work. And when you're working on some hipster technology, then you're becoming an expert in this technology, and that's super cool. But when you want to change your job, maybe do something completely different, a lot of your experience could be worthless. I
mm,
mean, the technological part of this.
mm. It's a weird like trade-off because like for example, I've talked to people that would prefer to do Laravel development, but they do Magento because it pays better. And like there's a level of complexity and a learning curve to Magento, but then like you were saying, like as the platform, you're thinking more in terms of how can we use a tech stack that will allow companies to hire for the lowest possible amounts, right? So you're using technologies that are widely used and that are maybe easier to use or some, like friendlier for
Mhm.
developers, right? So there's this weird trade-off where like sometimes like the best technology means that developers are paid less because simpler to use. You know what I mean? Whereas like an old like monolith code base might be better paid for the developer.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm. I mean, there are so many layers in this, and basically it all sums up, let's say, to 100%. And then you have some of this percentage has to be the technology itself. Some of this percentage has to be okay. So how this particular technology operates in the market, in the development market. Maybe some part of this is how hard it is for a junior developer or for someone else to jump into it, because this also translates into technological depth. So the harder it is to use some technology, the easier it is to introduce technological depth. That was one of the key reasons why you haven't choose React. Uh, so it's there are many layers, there are many dimensions, and it's I think finding the perfect balance is something that we're looking for in
Mhm.
this surf, and that, but not only, I think everyone are looking for this,
Yeah.
but certainly, like, the decision on the technological stack and architectural decision, it shouldn't be, it's my subjective opinion, but it shouldn't be 100% driven only by the technological requirements, because if that would be the case, we would all write our applications in Rust and just compile it to WebAssembly, because this is what works best in the browser. But
Right.
we're not doing this because it's a low level language, and it's hard to be productive in this. It's easy to make mistakes. There are no many Rust developers, and maybe it's not the the future of Rust is not certain. So even though it's a perfect decision from the
Mhm.
technical standpoint, from the business standpoint,
Yeah.
not maybe not the best one.
Yeah. Well, it's like PHP. Like people love to crap on PHP as a language, but it's very successful in the sense that it's so widely used,
Hmm.
widely understood. So there's a lot of those practical considerations.
Yeah, it was my first web language, so
Yeah, that's
back
kind
then
of
I think it was for something. So it came a very long way since there.
yeah.
I'm not I have totally no idea how it looks right now.
You use
Sometimes I'm just seeing.
you use PHP 4 and you're 25. You must have been like 15 or
Yeah,
something like that.
I started coding when I was 13,
Okay, nice.
and it was just because I think that was the first web page I made was even, it was 6th, 7th grade, so I was 11, and it was made in Microsoft front page. So that was actually a WYSIWYG builder
Right.
for web pages. And back then, I had no idea about the CSS, about the HTML, etc. And I slowly started seeing that this WYSIWYG editor is kind of limiting me,
Hmm.
and there's sometimes faster to make some changes in the code directly than in this WYSIWYG editor. So I started making some subtle changes, like changing colors in the CMS, maybe adding a table, or maybe structuring my website with tables in the code, because it's much faster than in this WYSIWYG editor. And slowly I was transitioning from this visual editor to programmer. And I think this is how I started, and I really like that. And shortly after that, my father offered me to make a website for his company, and then I did it. And then some aunt and colleague of an aunt, and it was rolling for a couple of years
Nice.
until I started doing WooCommerce and WordPress. And then I transitioned from a developer again to like a visual developer, because in WordPress everything is so easy.
Hmm.
Like, you don't have to code at all. You have you have a bunch of plugins, and you basically, to be fluent in WordPress, you have to know the tools for the task that you have to fulfill.
Hmm.
Mostly the plugins, and that's it, and how to
Hmm.
configure them. I was using a visual editor called Divi. I think it's the most popular right now. Back then it wasn't the most popular, but it should be even back then.
Hmm.
And basically with Divi, you were in control of all the structure of the web page, of all the content. It worked like all these headless CMSs right now,
Hmm.
but it was built into the WordPress.
Right.
And I think it's 10 years old right now or something like this. So it's
Nice. It was
Everything
ahead
that,
of
that
its
we
time.
think right now is innovative was actually figured out long time ago
Right.
and even succeeded. And right now we are saying, okay, so now it will be consumed with the API, and everyone are freaking out.
That's the big innovation. I'm actually going to have 80 on the podcast soon, the co-founder of WooCommerce. So I'm excited
Oh,
about that. Yeah, that should be cool. He's a really
yeah,
interesting guy.
I would be if I were you as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is a revolutionary software,
Yeah. Yeah.
and you can say many bad things about this, but the software itself, I think, is great. It's always the ecosystem that makes problems everywhere,
Right.
because no matter how long you will sit on optimizing this, someone will make an extension that will become popular, and that will be a total shit. We have this problem in Storefront as well.
Yeah. Right.
Clients or people on Slack, they are telling us, okay, so I searched through your live cases, and I can't find a good lighthouse score that you have on the demo. Why is that? And then I could always, maybe I could prepare some letter to them and just send this, because there's so many factors influencing that, like
Yeah.
what third parties you have chosen, how you use the software, because
Right.
we, like, comparing apples to grapes, or you could say that, okay, so we have PWA Studio and we have your Storefront, uh, and then we have 10 shops on this one and 10 shops on this one, and these shops are scoring better, these shops are scoring worse. Does it mean that
There'd
this
be a
software is
million
better,
reasons why.
No.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
It's just a mix of different reasons. This is why I don't like comparisons like this.
Right.
I don't like when someone is someone from competition, for example, is launching their website. I mean, their clients are launching their website. I'm checking the Lighthouse score. I'm thinking, okay, 20. Does it mean that this platform is bad? Probably no. Probably all that it means is that they have a lot of tracking on their website, and
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah.
And you will spend countless hours on optimizing stuff, and then your client will throw so many tracking stuff into this website that it's impossible to run smooth. And
And
it happens everywhere.
they'll throw a chat widget on there that'll screw up
Yeah.
the performance.
Yeah, even for one of our clients, because we also have this issue that Lighthouse is actually not measuring uh, view storefront properly. And we talked with Google about this, I think, 2 years ago, about, because Page Speed Insights, I think this is how the name of this website, where you're just pasting a link of a website and then you're getting the Lighthouse score. It's showing completely different scores than local Lighthouse runs. And we figure out after a very long time why. So it doesn't support HTTP2. And
Really?
sometimes it's also not detecting the browser idle properly, which means that if you have your website loaded, and when your website is loaded and you have something to prefetch, it always happens after the browser is idle, so the full page is loaded.
Hmm.
And if the tool can't detect that, then it adds all this prefetching to time to interactive. So even though the page is loaded and now you are downloading the content that will be required for another route, it's still counting this as wrong time, as a time to interactive. So we had this issue for a very long time,
Hmm.
and combine this with the lack of HTTP2 support, where so you can basically download only 5 things at the time.
Hmm.
And it's a disaster. And we had one client who was complaining, like, my largest contentful paint is 37 seconds, and he's sending me the screenshot of this Lighthouse score. And
Yeah.
it's very hard actually to tell your client that Lighthouse is basically a tool and it could have bugs, and
Yeah.
it's just some kind of measurement, but you always have to measure perceived performance. And I'm right now I tested the same website on web page test, which is a different website that is measuring the same things,
Hmm.
and the results are completely different.
Hmm.
Completely different. Instead of 37 seconds, we have 2.5 seconds.
That's a little bit of a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, like, you can, these tools are great, like lighthouses, as the name suggests. But it's just a lighthouse. It doesn't mean that's your ultimate goal,
Yeah.
and you can't just focus on the numbers in there and not measure the perceived performance, which is basically how good it is to use your website. Because I've seen a bunch of websites that have perfect lighthouse scores, but they are totally shitty. I've even read an article from some guy who was writing how to create a website that is totally inaccessible, but scores 100 in accessibility in Lighthouse.
Hacking Lighthouse.
Yeah, and you know, all of this is just showing us that these are just tools to measure the performance.
Yeah.
And being completely honest, for me, as a developer and as an author of a software, life was much, much easier before Lighthouse. Because right now, all clients think that Lighthouse score is the ultimate single source of truth, telling how good your website is performing. While it's not true at all.
Right.
You know, when you see this 37 seconds for largest contentful paint, you think, oh my god, like no one will visit this. Yet people are visiting this and seeing their largest contentful paint after 2 seconds.
Yeah, yeah.
So why it says 37? Yeah, so like, you know,
no perfect tools.
I don't even remember where this started. So let's just finish that with no perfect tools.
Yeah. Well, this is probably a good place to stop. Again, congrats on all the success. I'll be looking forward to that announcement, whatever it is, later this year. And it was a lot of fun catching up.
Thank you very much for having me. I was also really excited. I'm watching your podcast or listening. Like basically, I'm watching this, even though it's a podcast. And you know, at the beginning of my career, you were kind of like a celebrity in the in the Magento space, and I would never imagine that I would be a guest in your podcast. So thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome.